Hi, I'm Elliot Trotter, Editor-in-Chief of Scoober Magazine.
I'm Tyler Kinley, Captain of Seattle Sockeye.
Welcome to The Warm-Up, Scoober Magazine's preview show for the 2011 Club Championships, brought to you by USA Ultimate.
We're here at 5 Ultimate headquarters in Seattle, Washington to bring you commentary, predictions, and opinions on the coming championships in Sarasota, Florida.
All right, we are here with Tyler Kinley, Bryan Jones from No Look Scoober, and Ian Toner from Inside Breaks, here to talk Open Division. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Great to be here, Elliot.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So this has been a good season for Open Division Ultimate. We've seen the team that everyone expected to see doing well, doing just that, and that team is Revolver, last year's champions. Why don't we start by characterizing what this season has been for the three of you, what you guys have seen, what you've experienced, what have been the storylines of the season. Bryan, why don't we start with you?
Well, if you're looking back at this season, the one expected thing that did take place was, of course, Revolver dominating throughout with only one loss to Chain Lightning. Looking at the other leaders of the pack, we're looking at Ironside and Chain Lightning out of Atlanta. Both teams have separated themselves and shown that they have a lot of talent, and definitely should. Nobody wants to run into them at Sarasota. The surprises of the year really start kind of with Sockeye. Sockeye losing at regionals, not making it to nationals for the first time in I think around 10 years, really set up the path for Furious George, who's now a top 4 team, which nobody expected at the beginning of this year, especially after their lackluster finish at nationals. The other team that's kind of in the mix that people are talking about, but not sure if they're living up to the hype, is Double Wide. Ever since their injury at Labor Day with Kurt Gibson tweaking a hamstring, we haven't seen Double Wide live up to the potential that we've expected out of them after last year's semifinal finish. And even they weren't able to recover at Labor Day, even with Brody Smith and Kurt Gibson being healthy at regionals. Chain Lightning was able to take it to them, winning the region 15-11. And so that's really where we stand right now. Those 5 teams are in the hunt for a national championship. And that really, we're looking at really 3 teams, I think, in Ironside, Chain Lightning, and Revolver that kind of are in front of everybody else, with a few other teams that might be able to threaten.
Ian, what about you? How would you characterize the season, and do you agree with what Bryan saw from this year?
I agree with a number of the things that Bryan said. I think an interesting theme that we saw kind of play itself out throughout the season is how well teams have kind of reloaded and changed the composition of their rosters after losing some older, experienced players. You look at Chain losing AJ Deersmith and Zip. You look at Ironside losing Jeff Graham. And they've been able to bring in some young guys, and those young guys have stepped up and filled the roles that they needed to fill. The question is how they'll answer the call, once the heat is on in Sarasota.
So Tyler, how would you characterize this season? What were some of the notable victories, some of the notable losses? What are you seeing going into this championships?
The big story probably is Sockeye losing. Other than that, I think Revolver's loss to Chain at Labor Day was big. I think Revolver losing any game in the season gives every other team just that much more, an idea of hope that, like, going into a game, they're beatable, right? There's a chink in the armor. I think Furious has been a big surprise in that they haven't proven to be as strong in past couple years, and this year they have really looked great. The addition of Gabe Sonkya is huge. He seems to be like sort of the missing link in terms of an absolutely dominant athletic defender, and then a very, very smart offender on the turn, and clearly on your double game point line. There haven't been that many other big surprises, and I think part of that is Chesapeake getting canceled. I think there should have been a lot of storylines coming out of that just didn't get to happen. And so we don't really know exactly what to think of Ironside coming out of that tournament, or GOAT for that matter.
Ironside's only really seen this whole field of competition at ECC. Is that right?
Right, exactly. And so, it's hard to know how to game plan for a team like Ironside because you haven't seen them that much. They have retained a large core of players that went to the finals. And so they will definitely be one to watch. They have a crew of guys who are athletic, who know how to win, and who expect to win. I think the expecting to win is a key differentiator when you come to a late game. And if you have that history of winning, you have that history of being comfortable with success. I think Ironside's got that on their side already. So come a really close semis, I think that could be the edge that puts them into the finals.
So for all you guys now, if we're looking at Revolver as maybe the strongest team, it seems like you guys were all pointing to that. They're then the team to beat for this tournament. What does Revolver have to do? Just not lose, and what makes it so that they don't do that? Who are they relying on? What are they relying on to be the best team right now? Bryan?
Really, I've got to watch Revolver at every major tournament this year, and the two constants that you're going to see on the offense are Bart Watson and Robbie Cahill. And Tyler alluded to when they lost to Chain that everybody got a vote of confidence that they could beat Revolver going into the season. And while that's true, I think it was exactly what Revolver needed. They need a reminder every once in a while that they can be beaten. And not only that, Sockeye had a big lead on them in the regional semifinal that really showed that Revolver, while still the odds-on favorite, can be beaten. But when you're looking at who's going to decide whether they win or lose, a lot of people like to point to Bo Kittredge, but I'm not a fan of that. I think you're looking at Robbie Cahill and Bart Watson. When they perform, Revolver's going to win, and most of the time they're good two players to place your bet on. But in their losses and the times they've stumbled, we've seen both players have turnovers. Usually that points to Bart Watson. He's a huge risk taker in the game. You're going to see him usually get an in cut and then turn around and jack a huck. Cahill, we can find more behind the disc, sometimes still downfield. He's going to be more the consistent guy. But when you see Cahill struggle, if you can pressure Cahill, that's where Revolver, that's the do or die for Revolver is Robbie Cahill. That's where the offense runs through. And besides that, though, Revolver has a dominating defense that seems to, in the second half, always adjust, clamp down on the marks. And when you have Mac Taylor, who can guard, just about anybody in terms of size and skill, he had a huge dump D in the comeback against Sockeye. You're going to see that defense tighten up with stars all over the place. It's going to be hard to beat them overall.
Now, there have been a couple times this season that Revolver has played a close game. They lost that one game to Chain at Labor Day. Is that what you saw in these games? The other game that comes to mind for me is that Universe Point win against Sockeye at Regionals. And was that an example of Robbie Cahill not performing?
That's an interesting question. So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't realize.
I would not characterize that as Robbie underperforming. He had one very uncharacteristic drop. They gave us a real short field and an opportunity for a break. I think one of the differences that game is that Sockeye came in with a very good attitude, and our defense was able to apply pressure, forcing them to make difficult throws. I think Lou Burris wrote a recent article talking about this exact thing. And really that is the way to beat Revolver, is to force them to make just slightly lower percentage throws. They're going to be able to complete, 90+% of their throws. They just have guys who can get open consistently, and it's not a defense that you're necessarily trying to get just a ton of blocks. It's basically saying, okay, we know that you are a good team, and we need to force you into your plan B, which for them would be forcing them to huck. And it might sound crazy saying that they have receivers like Mac Taylor or Cassidy Rasmussen or Bo Kittredge for one. But still, those throws have to be thrown well. They have to be at least somewhat on target. And so that option is the tougher for them, as opposed to giving them a bunch of underneath cuts, letting them get close to the goal, and then just be able to punch it in. They've proven they can do that effectively over and over and over and over, and that's how we put pressure on them, and that's how Chain put pressure on them. Chain, I think Lou Burris described it as lured them into doing it, and we more pushed them into doing it. But regardless of how you get there, that's going to be the way that you pressure them.
Ian, what do you think? Is Revolver beatable by the current field, or are there losses in close games just exemplary of bad days?
I mean, I definitely agree with Tyler that you need to make them move beyond their number one look, their primary looks. You need to make them get into more uncomfortable or unorthodox situations. That being said, I really think there are only three ways you're going to beat Revolver. You're going to have Robbie turfing flicks or just having a bad day, which he doesn't have very often. You are going to have Robbie or Bart, turn an ankle or something and be unable to contribute to the offense. And the other way you're going to beat them is if their defense isn't on, which is also extremely rare. I mean, Bryan and Tyler were both talking about they're great dump defenders. I mean, they have Mac Taylor, they have Sam Canner, who came up with huge blocks using their agility on the dump and Sunday at Northwest Regionals. And I think that's been a huge difference maker for them. And if for some reason they can't get that to turn on or start happening in Sarasota, then they're not going to put themselves in the opportunity position to get the breaks they need. So if teams are really willing to work hard on their resets and really smart distributing the disc on their resets, I think you're going to do a good job of preventing them from getting break opportunities. But those three scenarios, Robbie turfing flicks, Robbie or Bart getting hurt, and then Revolver's defense not being on. Those are the only ways that Revolver is going to lose this tournament.
Let's talk a bit about Ironside and Double Wide, who are part of the five that we're looking at for potentially winning this tournament. Ironside, we talked about, has not really seen this field of competition quite as much. And Double Wide has had sort of an up and down season. What do you guys expect from these two groups? And Ian, why don't we stick with you still?
Okay. I expect I did a little whiteboard projection a la the late great Tim Russert, and we've got here what I think could happen for the pre-quarters, the quarters, the semis, and the finals. In terms of Ironside and Double Wide, Ironside obviously still has some great institutional talent and knowledge that's going to help them win important games. That being said, they still have a fair amount of youth, and yes, some of these guys have played in big college nationals games before, but they haven't played together in big club nationals games before, and I think that can be something that might hurt them when they're in a tough spot against Furious.
So did Ironside have a lot of turnover this year?
Ironside had a fair amount of turnover. I mean, they lost a few people from their O-line, and they picked up a bunch of young, athletic guys to replace.
Who are some of these players that were replaced?
The biggest replacement is definitely Jeff Graham. He was a huge cutter for them. Peter Pryl, however, has come in. I'm not sure if it's his second year on the team or if he's been on the team for longer than that, but he's from Middlebury. He's been doing a great job getting open at will. Tough mark for some of the best defenders to shut down. So that's go ahead.
And what do you think about Double Wide?
What do I think about Double Wide?
Are they stable enough to make it to semis? Are they stable enough to make it to finals? Can they beat teams that are stronger than them or have done better this season consistently?
I think they're strong enough to make it to the semifinals. In my draw, I have them facing Revolver again, and I don't see them making it past Revolver in that situation. Revolver has a number of guys that they can throw on Brody, that they can throw on Kurt, give them a new matchup every point, every couple points, and then Double Wide's offense has a harder time figuring out how to score around these guys.
It's very difficult to rate Double Wide in terms of they can win a championship, but I haven't seen good signs since Labor Day for them when they really struggled. If you're going to win a championship, you don't lose that much usually to Johnny Bravo in a late season tournament like they did in pool play at Labor Day. They seem to really be following almost a Florida model where they're relying on Kurt and Brody to run the offense. And nobody has really seen it so far. I don't know if they're trying to lull us into sleep and really just make us wait for them to put on a show at Sarasota. We've known that they've had the talent for a while. They look good at Colorado Cup. And if they play together right, they can make a run. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see them sputter a little bit, and ultimately that's going to be their demise.
Tyler, what do you think? You've played against Double Wide this season. Are they a team that relies on those two core players, Brody and Kurt? What explains the results they've seen this season?
A few things. Brody and Kurt both bring a mentality of winning to the team. And I think for Double Wide, that's huge. When you can enter a game sure that you can win, and with a couple leaders that are sure you can win, that can be a difference maker. For two, beyond the mentality, those guys really are mainstays in their offense. With Kurt gone, Sockeye was able to take down Double Wide, but not without struggle. And with Kurt there, I think the game is very, very different, much tougher. I do also think that, Double Wide's done at this point what it takes to get to nationals, and that's all you need to do. In a game like the South Regional Finals, you don't need to win. And so I think Double Wide has proven both in their college strategy, Florida's proven in their college strategy, but Double Wide with Florida guys has proven, they do what it takes to get there. And then once they're there, they'll win. Do I think they'll win? I don't know. But I think judging them based on a regional final that was more for seeding would be fallacy. If Kurt's healthy, I think it's a very different game. And I do see them as having potential to go pretty deep into the tournament, especially if it's windy.
So they're going to have that opportunity to see their regional final matchup again in pool play on Thursday of the tournament against Chain Lightning. And as we've said, Chain has been a very strong team this season. They're the one team that has beaten Revolver. They have lost two significant games this season, both at Labor Day. One was against Revolver in the final, where Revolver came back in style and defeated them. I think it was something like 15-6.
Yeah.
And they also lost to Furious George, who we'll get to as well. Is Chain the one David to Revolver's Goliath of this tournament, or are they better than that? What do you guys expect from them as well? And we'll stick with Tyler for now.
From Chain? Chain is just an athletically dangerous team across the board. When you put a handler defender on one of their handlers, they'll go deep. When you put a downfield defender on one of their downfielders, they'll come in and just dominate them handling-wise. Chain's a team where they lose because they make mistakes more so than you force them to make mistakes. And I think you saw that a lot on some of their resets. Asa Wilson, absolutely dominant downfield cutter. They bomb a huck to him, But he still, if he doesn't make it in the end zone, has to reset to somebody. And if they're not on the same page, which they a couple times weren't at Labor Day, that's a turn, just like any other. And a team like Revolver will capitalize on that. So Chain's Achilles heel might be their own ability to be consistently a possession-oriented team. In 2009, that's what won them a championship, in my opinion. In 2011, we'll see if they can maintain that kind of consistency.
Bryan, what do you think about Chain Lightning?
Tyler really said it best. They're very athletic, and they are their own worst enemy. Labor Day, especially in the meltdown versus Revolver, we were seeing, they love to play the deep ball. I said that so when I previewed them earlier this season, and they love to go one pass and have one of their handlers put it deep. And that's really what they're going to continue to do, I think, to try and beat some of these teams, is use that athletic ability to get open deep. But if they're not connecting, there's going to be a lot of turns. And then with the offensive efficiencies of good club teams, you're going to put yourself into a hole. So it depends, if I could see Chain winning this entire thing if they were able to get their hucks just going perfectly. If it's a no-win scenario, I think they're just going to sit there bombing it. You have players like Nick Lance, who's going to put a flick whenever he can. He doesn't hesitate at all. On the other hand, the one side for them being patient has really been Grant Lindsley. He was a rock at Labor Day, and from what I've heard from our own Ian Toner is that he's been great underneath.
Ian, is that true? Has Grant Lindsley been an important playmaker and role player for Chain, and is Chain as a whole consistent and strong enough mentally to take down Revolver again?
I think from what I've heard and the limited video that I've been able to see, Grant has done a great job for them, being able to get the disc very frequently. And just like Tyler was saying, he's one of those players who can pretty much do anything once you start him out on the field. He can defend anybody. He can pick up the disc and jack it. He can then go back downfield and get a D back or catch the continuation score. I mean, he can do everything for you. So I think he's been great for them. Does Chain have what it takes mentally to beat Revolver? It's a good question. I think Chain's focus on field in high pressure situations is not entirely maybe where it needs to be to win a championship. I mean, the things that come to mind are, the trigger happiness of Nick Lance and sometimes Greg Swanson or Dylan Tennell. I mean, they're great throwers, they're great players. There are just some times where you see throws go up, and I understand that they have an athletic supporting cast and they trust their receivers, and maybe that is even part of the game plan to throw up the 50-50 deep ball. But there are times when they throw up throws like that, or questionable throws, and you kind of wonder why they're not, working it under more. From what I heard, they worked it under a little more in the South Regional Final. But we'll get a great shot at seeing how their offense is working come 4:00 on Thursday against Doublehead.
I'd agree. I think Grant provides a great replacement for Zip in terms of a stall 7 guy. What I mean by that is that's the guy who will get open on most anybody just in terms of quickness and speed to provide something just to reset the disc. And having that guy, somebody who's just so dominant, I think Zip is a good stall 7 guy. Nate Castine on Sockeye is similar in terms of just explosiveness and just, you can turn to him and he's going to give you something where you can just reset the disc. Grant providing that to Chain is a huge benefit for them. The other piece, I completely agree, is that Chain has a history at this point of success, and they expect to win. I think that expect to win is one piece that they have that could turn the tides against a team like Revolver, where a Ring of Fire has incredible momentum swing potential. I mean, if they get hot, they can just ride those guys and really, really make some noise. But come 13-13, that's a long game. And when you get to that scenario, I think Chain has a history and says, we can do this, whereas Ring hasn't done that for many a year at this point. I mean, they've been there, but it's been a little while. And the team, the roster at this point is very different from the roster that did that years ago.
The only other team that did beat them this season was Furious George, and that was in a tight game. The final score was 15-14, also at Labor Day. And Furious strikes me as an interesting team too when talking about mental games. And in a lot of their come-from-behind victories, I'm not sure if their game against Chain was come-from-behind, but they had a couple come-from-behind victories at regionals against Sockeye and against Rhino, which put them into this tournament. And they've struck me as a team that has a very consistent mental game. I'm curious how they compare to Chain, and then also how Furious compares to a team like Ring of Fire, who Tyler said can ride that energy and step up to the plate and maybe has a lot of athleticism, but maybe doesn't have the same consistent mental game that Furious does. So looking at these three teams, how does Furious compare to Chain, and then how does Furious compare to Ring? Ian, why don't we start with you?
How does Furious compare to Chain? I'll start there. Furious comparing to Chain. Tyler was right in that they seem to be a very loose team. I mean, you ask them about how they strategize and things like that, and their response is chicks dig the long ball. That can serve them well. I think they have a lot of very strong, at the same time as being loose and always ready to gun. I think they have a lot of strong, calming leaders on their team. You look at a player like Robert Runner, who fits that leadership description to a T. He's someone who's always going to take the 100% looks, who's not going to show extreme frustration. Maybe he'll show that he's excited, but he's going to try and be the rock and the even keel example that the team needs. And I mean, you see him; he's a rock on their D line, and he comes onto their O line at times when they need it. So that calming force is something that could help Chain. Furious, their mental game, they're just never say die, and that's what everyone loves about them right now, and that's why I think they can really actually make it to the semifinals, even if they have to go through an Ironside.
Before we get to Ring, I'm curious, Bryan, what is your opinion of Furious? And having seen them a couple times this season, have they surprised you with these victories? How do you characterize that team?
Well, they're a very interesting case because when I look at the top 5 teams, which we've established, Furious to me seems to lack the most athletic talent. They're kind of at the bottom of the totem pole, but they seem to have this veteran grittiness that gets them through the games. And we alluded to their mental ability to stay in games and come from behind. And really, when you're looking at the defense, that's what sparks the comebacks here, because they rattle, and their games at regionals, they rattle off a bunch of breaks in the middle of the game, come back. And at the center of all that is veteran Andy Collins, which he always seems to be involved in a controversial play where they're arguing a call, he gets somebody's face, and the other team gets frustrated with it, and then you see him go out and make a huge play immediately off of the turn, to either a hawk or a layout for a score, and Furious just seems to ride that wave. And it's pretty incredible to watch when it happens. And so against the odds, when you look at the team on paper, you probably don't think Furious is in it, but they do have a real shot at going very deep in this tournament.
And Tyler, what's your experience been with competing against Furious this year? Sockeye has beaten Furious; they've beaten them handily, and Furious has come back and won when it mattered to get to nationals.
It did. Furious is a team that Sockeye loves to battle with. I know at this point personally most of the team, and am actually friends with all of them. They really surprised Sockeye in terms of the adjustments they made at regionals. And I think the team that we competed against on both Saturday and Sunday at regionals was a night and day difference from what we saw at sectionals. and we're talking weeks of change. Talking to Morgan Hibbert, he said that they game planned between sectionals and regionals, and probably before sectionals, directly for Sockeye. And a lot of it was based on our handler pressure and on our junk defenses. And so I think you can see a lot of that improvement in their game right now. Their resets were fantastic at Northwest Regionals. And you can see that over and over again against every team they faced. Guys like Andrew Brown, who you might not say are the quickest players in the game, are getting open just at will and in really powerful positions. And that opens up his quiver of throws, which is huge. I mean, the guy's can pivot and release from most angles. I think based on the adjustments they made, Furious has really put their name in the hat for a potential 2011 contender for a title. And a lot of that, and my experiences with teams I've played on, and in 2010, it was with Sockeye with no expectations, right? We had nothing on the table, and Furious this year is coming off of consecutive seasons where I think they have felt disappointment. And so I think they don't have that expectations on their back that say a Revolver does or a Chain does, where they feel they should be in the semis, they should be in the finals, whatever.
So they're just in it to do whatever they can do.
Exactly, and that's where you see teams like Furious come from behind, where there is no expectation, and they're just playing for themselves, and for the love of the game, and for whatever, and there's no pressure on them, and they have really rode that well.
So you think that might propel them pretty far in this tournament?
I think it could. I think that's a huge difference maker for them.
Do you guys think the same, that Furious could go pretty far? Bryan?
I think Furious can go pretty far. I kind of have doubts on their ability to win it. I think semifinals for them is definitely doable, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them exit in quarters. They had as Tyler said, if they're game planning that much for Sockeye, I don't know how much time they can spend on the opponents they're going to play at nationals. They're going to face a new double wide team compared to the one they faced at Labor Day, I think. Chain is going to take them lightly. They're going to have a much tougher road. I can see them going to semis, quarters probably. I just don't know if I'm going to see them in finals. I doubt we're going to see them there, in fact.
Ian, what do you think? Furious?
I would have to mostly agree with Bryan. They can definitely make it to the quarterfinals. They're going to have a really good test against Ring first thing on Thursday. How they respond to that game and how they perform there will probably be indicative of how far they're going to go. I think they can make quarters or semis. Breaking through the finals would be a lot to expect, but I mean, come on, who expected them to make it this far at the beginning of this season?
Yeah, you mentioned Ring and their matchup against Furious in Pool C, and that pool is a mess. We've got Furious George, who has been very strong this season. Ring, who has, they beat Truck Stop at regionals. They had a win over Sockeye at ECC and have been sort of all over the boards. It's clear that they're a strong team and have the ability to beat a lot of other strong teams too, but we don't know how consistent they are. Machine as well has been a team that I've been surprised by how strong they were this season. And then Southpaw, I believe they made it to quarters last year of the championships, and they haven't had a strong season so far, but there's potential there to go far as well. Looking at some of these teams like Ring and Machine, what do you expect from teams in their position? Ian?
In terms of Ring, I can expect them. I mean, they're not going to lay an egg in pool play and then be relegated to the lower pools. They're gonna advance to power pools. That doesn't mean that Machine and Southpaw won't play them close, though. If you're looking at a team like Machine, I was definitely stoked to see them perform well. And then they lost their regional final to Sub-Zero, I believe it was. So that raised a lot of questions heading into Florida. And then, I don't know, to finish talking about that pool, Southpaw has a very, very regimented offense. Trey Katzenbach is a great, great player who still does a lot for their offense. They have a lot of young athletic defenders. They have great regimented handler movement. The thing that I think is going to hurt them is their mental game. I think I've seen on their sidelines, they can be openly negative towards their own teammates. And I think when you are in a high pressure situation and in an important nationals game, you need to be united and on the same page, not throwing water bottles around and arguing with your coach. If that still happens in Florida, I think that's going to be a big problem for them and prevent them from doing any kind of serious seed breaking.
Bryan, what do you think? Have you had the opportunity to watch Ring much this season?
I got to see Ring at ECC, and definitely the win over Sockeye is something to be happy about, but I think a win over a truck stop and getting into the finals is kind of saying that the guys in the finals at ECC is overestimating things. ECC format was made so people got more games against people they hadn't played, and I don't know how far Ring can go. I know that they do a great job with Noah Saul, Paul Weeks, and Brett Mazuka in the handling line and offense. Their defense definitely has a fire. They can come out with great intensity. I just don't see the high ceiling for them. I see them upsetting a team maybe in pool play and then kind of making an early exit in pre-quarters or maybe making it to quarters. I don't see them going deep in this tournament at all, really. As far as the other part of Pool C, I believe, when you're looking at Southpaw, Ian talked about their mental game, but really, when I watched their offense, I wasn't impressed at all. Trey Katzenbach is a great player, as he said, but their L stack was a mess at Labor Day. Unquestionably, there was no flow. They had trouble when teams were forcing them into the L stack, forcing throws into that direction, and there just wasn't movement off the offense. Now, if they can get Jake Rainwater moving downfield and some Dave Bear working well from the handler position, they can be successful, but they have a lot to work on. Machine, I didn't get to really see, but I know that they played some teams close. But it seems to me that while this is like a kind of a messy pool, I think you're going to see teams lose by underperforming. And I could see Ring losing, maybe getting down on themselves early if they come in thinking that things are going to be too easy for them. They might be overconfident. I'm not. Besides Furious, I'm not too impressed with the team remaining in Pool C.
Tyler, what do you think about Ring and other teams in Pool C?
Pool C is the most exciting pool of all. Sockeye faced Machine at ECC, and they looked fantastic. 13 points offensively into the game. After that, I think their workhorses got a little tired, or we saw uncharacteristic errors. Whatever happened, whether it was fatigue or mental fatigue, like a loss of focus, Sockeye prevailed. But should a Machine or a Southpaw put together a complete game, this has serious upset potential. That is an exciting pool. Also because both Furious and Ring can have off games. You're rarely going to see an off game from a Revolver or an Ironside or a Chain. But I think Furious and I think Ring can both offer a game to a Machine or a Southpaw that could be an upset.
What do you guys think about some of the other X Factor teams? Some of the guys that we haven't talked about yet. In my mind, those are Johnny Bravo, Goat, and Truck Stop. Bryan, what do you think about those teams? Are they going to make any noise at this tournament?
Well, when you look at Bravo, they're a team to me that's outside of the top 5 that seems to have a lot of defensive talent, the athleticism to hang with a lot of teams. They forced a lot of turnovers at Labor Day, but after they forced those turnovers, their offense was pretty much a mess. They were just relying on Jimmy Mickle to huck it, and it just wasn't working out for them. They couldn't capitalize. And then even on the straight offensive line side, they weren't able to get the disc in the end zone at an efficient pace. So if they come to this tournament, they've had a long time since Labor Day to fix things. And if they got some veteran presence in there, they can learn how to calm them down and be more consistent, they got a shot to do some damage. I wouldn't be surprised for them to post a few wins that we didn't expect them to. When you're looking at GOAT, this is a team that's flown under the radar because they haven't played much at all this season since Colorado Cup. Lost narrowly to Furious in the Canadian final, and Furious has done incredible since then. Goat lost to Ironside only 4 times this season. I mean, that's what we're looking at. We know that Ironside's better than them, but how good is Goat? That's the question I'm looking at going into this. And then looking at Truck Stop, just, I don't know what to do with. They're a team that seems to beat people below them pretty consistently. Can't rise to the occasion like Ring can to beat a team higher than them. I expect Truck Stop kind of fizzle out around the pre-quarters or quarterfinals, not really having momentum to make a deep run in this tournament.
Tyler, do you think any of these other teams, even beyond those 3, Bravo, Goat, and Truck Stop, are going to make an impact to these top teams or shed some blood?
I think all 3 of those teams have serious potential to get hot at nationals. Truck Stop is an extremely athletic team, especially defensively. They will bid for a disc at will, and they have no real fear of being physical. I think that can take you pretty far. Against a team like Bravo and Goat, however, let's say they're matched up. Those teams are all physical. Who knows what would happen? I think the Bravo Goat matchup is probably one of the most exciting Thursday matchups you can ask for. It's the 8-9. I wouldn't say there's almost any difference in terms of a placement, right? I would put them almost at the same level. Will they make an impact greater than quarters? That's a tough call. My money would be on no. And I think it's because they would depend on getting hot. And if they do, I mean, they are frightening, right? If Revolver faced a Johnny Bravo who was just on fire, it would be a game to watch. But the odds of that happening, I don't think are as high as they should be for Revolver to go, or for Bravo to go far.
Okay. So you mentioned Goat versus Bravo as a game to watch on Thursday. What other games to watch are you excited about for Thursday and maybe beyond? What matchups would you like to see? And we'll go down the line here, and then we're going to jump into predictions. So Tyler, what other games are of interest to you?
I think Pool C has a lot of games that are interesting. I think Machines games against Furious and Ring are both ones to watch. I think they get upset there. I think the Furious Ring game is going to be exciting, and I think the Bravo Goat game will be exciting. Other than that, there's always the potential for an Oakland or Tanasi to just blow up with little expectations and a lot of fire on a Thursday. However, I don't think those games, if there's an upset, will pan out to mean much. So I would say Pool C and Pool A are probably the ones to watch.
Okay. Bryan, what do you think? What are you looking forward to?
When we talk about the lower teams here, the one team that's being lost in the shuffle is Sub-Zero, and the rumor has it that Eric Johnson has gone ballistic on teams, and he was incredible to watch. When I saw him the first day of college nationals, he looked like a Callahan nominee, and he continued to play that way throughout the Next Gen Tour. Now we're looking at him. We haven't even mentioned Sub-Zero yet, and most people are saying, Machine's probably still better than them. Well, looking at this Truck Stop Sub-Zero matchup, if Eric Johnson can't be contained, then I think we're going to see a show, and we're going to see an exciting game, especially in day one. Now, Luther in college nationals kind of tailed off. Eric Johnson was still playing well, but not at the same level. If he comes in fresh and can deliver that performance that he has before, that big game performance, I would have my eye on that game for that potential. Other than that, I agree. Johnny Bravo go double wide chain, and any game in Pool C has the ability, with Southpaw being the 4th seed, as being close, especially toward the end.
Ian, what do you think? What are you looking forward to? What matchups do you want to see happen?
We've hit on the big ones. Some of the lesser known ones that we might not have talked about. Tyler talked about the possibility of a Tanasi getting hot, and I know I'm going to be watching Truck Stop Tanasi first thing Thursday morning. If they can, I think they can play Truck Stop close. if they can ride some of that momentum, they could fight their way through the lower power pools into pre-quarters. I also definitely want to watch Oakland. I love the way their college chemistry translates so easily into the club game. I mean, they're all current and former Pittsburgh and Southern players. And, the knock on Pitt has been maybe they don't always have it together mentally. Maybe they aren't always focused. Maybe they aren't always supportive of each other. But I was really impressed at regionals with how even keeled they were. And so seeing them take down Madison wouldn't be a surprise to me. And then, I'd like to see how well they could fight in the lower power pools. If they draw Tanazi, Oakland in lower power pools, that would be a fantastic game to watch.
All right, we are going to jump into predictions now. So we'll look at pool play predictions, who's going to make it to semis, and then what we're going to see in the final. So why don't we start with you, Ian, on the end?
I'll refer you back to the magic whiteboard predictions that we've got going here. Revolver and double wide in one semifinal, and it puts Chain and Furious in the other semifinal. Revolver double wide, great rematch of last year's semifinal. I think Revolver has the defensive depth to take care of that matchup. The other semifinal, Chain Furious, man, that's a real toss-up for me. I'm going to take Chain over Furious in the other semifinal, and that sets up Revolver Chain in the finals. I think Revolver's defensive depth is something that will carry them to victory over Chain.
It'll be real simple here. We're going to see Revolver, Ironside, Furious, and Chain win their pools. But when it comes to semis, we're going to see Furious out of there. We're going to see double wide in, Revolver double wide in the one semifinal. We're going to see Chain versus Ironside in the other semifinal. Ian alluded to Furious's ability to come back. Well, Ironside has also had that ability this year, being down 5-1 to Sockeye at ECC. They've shown a lot of heart, especially with Brandon Malachek, Muffin, leading the defensive line there. I like Ironside. Ironside's going to move on, and we're going to have a rematch of the final from last year. Look for maybe Ironside to come out of the gate pretty fast, even maybe lead at half. But Revolver's going to make the adjustments that they almost always do, tighten up on that D-line and play well when it matters most and win 15-12.
I think it's Revolver's tournament to lose. And what I mean by that is, in order for a team to best Revolver, not only does that team have to play one of their best games, but Revolver has to play poorly. And in order for Revolver to win a given game against any opponent, they simply have to play well. So just the odds of Revolver playing a bad game and the other team playing their best game are slim. So I see Revolver taking this. The interesting thing for me about this tournament is that the next tier down is big. And in many years past, you have a favorite and then 2 to 3 teams that you expect to topple them or to challenge them. But this year, I think looking down the list, it's Furious, Ring, Chain, double wide, Ironside, truck stop, and then maybe a Bravo or a Goat really having the potential to challenge them, and that makes this incredibly exciting. I won't, and I haven't predicted, and I don't feel comfortable predicting because it's gonna come down to who gets hot. And who gets cold. I mean, an Ironside could go incredibly deep. They've got the roster to do it, but Sockeye proved it. I mean, you get cold, you could go out early, and it could blow up your predictions. So I see it as Furious's to lose, Revolver's to lose, and a lot of other teams' potential to get up pretty high, second, third, fourth.
All right, well, why don't we leave it at that? Revolver's opportunity for a repeat championship and also to potentially lose out to one of these hungry young teams. I'd like to thank Tyler Kinley, Bryan Jones, and Ian Toner for joining us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We'll be here.
Yeah, and that is your open division. Thanks to USA Ultimate, Skyd Magazine will be down in Sarasota offering unprecedented coverage, including a live blog, live audio play-by-play and commentary, and expert analysis from the likes of Tyler Kinley, Brian Jones, Kyle Weisbrod, Maya Ziv, Ian Toner, and more.
We'll see you in Sarasota.
That was killer, guys.
Let's do it. It's a wrap.